Hello and well met. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Going back to prepping for the Phandelver and below, the Shattered Obelisk. And what I have today is I'm still working on Chapter 1. So it's taking me a little longer than I thought, which is normal. So I don't really mind that it's taken a while. But the closer you get to your game day, the more rushed you're going to be. So that's something that you want to try to avoid if possible. And really all I'm doing is going through the adventure with a kind of like a fine-tooth comb, because I don't want to struggle and look for things and hunt them down during gameplay so much. So one of the things I'm doing for myself is that I'm on the last map. So if I bring up the images, and I'll use my filter so I don't have to go through 50 million pictures here. So going to the previous maps that I had worked on, and this is the Goblin Trail. This is right after the ambush, when you head from the ambush to the actual hideout. So essentially I have this map here. I've already put a little bit of work into it. If I unlock this, I have basically put a dusk lighting on here. I got a little bit of cloud cover. Zooming into the map, I did add some of those little animated sections here on the other map, but I'm going to go do the same thing on here. Is put some of those trees and, you know, the moving trees. And then I need to place 2 traps somewhere on this map. So if you go to the actual adventure, it kind of goes through that with you. So right in the goblin ambush area, when you read down to the bottom here, it talks about there's 2 potential traps. So after you rest, or maybe you're going to camp out or whatever, maybe you've captured one of the goblins, the party needs to rest after the goblin, or they might need to rest after the goblin ambush, depending on how the battle plays out. So see the rulebook for more information about short and long rests. So this might be the time to stop your first or second adventure, because I'd have a session 0, and then I'd have one leading up to the goblin ambush for pacing. So after that, you probably do a short or a long rest, more than likely a short rest, so the trail doesn't go cold. And then you can pursue the goblins from the trail over to the hideout for the goblins. So after the characters defeat the goblins, any inspection of the area reveals that the creatures have been using this place to stage ambushes for some time. So if you stick around and investigate the area, you can find that. There's a trail that's kind of hidden behind some bushes on the north side of the trail. So this is where the trail begins, down here. And basically it says it only takes a DC 10 or survival check to recognize that the goblins have been coming and going along the trail, as well as signs of 2 human-sized bodies being hauled away from the ambush site. So that's really good information to find once you're, going through the adventure. So the party can steer the wagon away from the road, tie it off, and kind of hide it off to the side of the road if they're worried about that. But it leads about 5 miles northwest and ends at the Kragma hideout. Ask the players to determine their marching order as the characters move down the trail. The order is important because the goblins have set 2 traps to thwart pursuers. So you have a trail trap, and then it gives you a description of how it works, and then there's a pit trap. So it's kind of camouflaged. So you can place these pretty much wherever you want. There's really no specific area that you have to put them. So I would put them strategically on the map. Like this opening here might be, maybe this corner up here, I might put the pit trap there. So I'm going to figure out a way to kind of spring that on the players, and I'll make a trap layer for it. So what I might do is just copy and paste this area right here and make a tile and just smack it right down on top of it. So that way it kind of blends in with the ground. And then the other thing is just to pay attention. You get to award them experience if they make it to the Kragma hideout. And if they have the goblin with them, they can avoid the traps altogether. So if they actually capture one of the goblins and they leave him alive long enough, he can tell them about different things So it says he regains consciousness after a few moments, and then after he's captured, you might be able to convince him to share what it knows. So if that's the case, he can lead the party to the hideout and avoid traps along the way. So this is important to the adventure, depending on how you're going to do this. So you can add points on the map where you can actually show the trap, or you can just make a link there, and if they move in that area, then you can use the traps that are in the NPC area. So what I'd done is I took the regular traps that were in the adventure, and I made a copy of it, because the ones that you get with the adventure are pretty vague. So I made copies of them. And then what I did is I took the information from the adventure itself and pasted it on the second side of this. So there's the other tab. And what you want to do here is I also link the story entry so you know what this refers to. So if I click on that, that brings up the story entry where those exist. I just did that for my own sake in case I accidentally closed Windows, because I've been known to do that. Normally I'd have this thing down here when I'm running the adventure. But when you're in the middle of something or you get distracted, you may accidentally close this out for some reason while you're in the middle of doing something. Or maybe accidentally we're trying to click over here and you end up clicking on this X and X out. So if you have the trap open and you're getting ready to drag that onto the players, whatever effects are, you can just click on that and it brings it back up. So I'm a big believer in linking things back and forth together, because that's really important to navigate through Fantasy Grounds and your organizational skills. So that really helps with that. And then secondly, these are independent of the adventure now. So if I export this as a module, the work that I've done is saved as a separate entity, so it doesn't try to look for the links from the original adventure. So that's another thing why I like doing little things like this. So this is actually going to be placed somewhere on the map. I can pin these NPCs directly to the map, because I don't necessarily have to put them on the combat tracker. So these only have a few things. So what you have on this is when you actually pop these up, these are just traps. They use a stat block, but that's just so you can deal damage. So you have a saving throw that you can roll and drop on the players in the combat tracker. And then if they fail or they fall in, then they take bludgeoning damage from the pit trap. And then the other trap is a snare, so they have to make a dex saving throw. And if they don't, they're suspended upside down, and it's considered restrained. So I would put that condition on them if they didn't make their save. And then if they're cut down and it's not careful enough, like someone cuts them down with a knife and they don't brace them or catch them, it's 1d6 bludgeoning damage from the fall from that. So you're high enough in the air to where you could take a little blow, and when you're low level like that, that can be pretty devastating. That can kill you if you're still wounded from the previous battle. So these are just two of the traps that are along the trail to kind of make that a little bit more interesting. I think I would also add a little bit of embellishment in regards to the description of the trail, because they don't really give you much of a description here. It just talks about the traps, and it just tells you where it is and basically how to handle it, but it doesn't really give you any sort of descriptive text here. So I might add something like that on here to make this a little bit more interesting. Maybe just one like a text entry or something that I might want to add or make a note of, so that when we get to this point, I know to bring that up, and then I can read off what I have. It also depends on if they have the goblin with them or not, so you might have to write it kind of generically. So I'm going to actually open up the PDF that came with this, and I'm just about ready to go to Chapter 2. And what I was doing in Chapter 2 is I'm working on the conversion of the maps. And what I had found here in Chapter 2 was that these were big, huge maps here. So this is a map that was like 10,000 by something. It was huge. It was like 60 megabytes in file size, and it was just ginormous. And basically GIMP and the plugin that I was using to convert these said, nope, too big. So I couldn't convert those with the batch convert, so I had to use a different program. And I've essentially had to come down like 7 times, or the size. So it was 21,000 by something for print size, and for that size. But for Fantasy Grounds, now it's at 3,000 by 2,000, which is still pretty big. But these are mostly reference maps, so I don't think I'm going to be sharing both of these. I might share the rooftop map, because there's two. There's one with the openings, this is the one I would share with the players. This has the rooftops on it. And then the other one doesn't have any rooftops on there, where it actually shows the interior. So what I might do is use this one for like the Game Master map, and then use this other one for the players. And these are a ton smaller. Like this one is, let's see, I'll just give you an idea. So this file and this one together are really like, this one's 2 megabytes now, and this other one is 2.07. So those are really small compared to what they were. So the original size as a JPEG was 60 megs on one and 49 megabytes on the other. So those are huge maps. Those are what you really want to avoid when you're using Fantasy Grounds. You don't want to just bring any map in and then try to share that with your players. It made my when I opened it up in Photoshop, it coughed. It was like, it took it like a minute almost to open it up. And I have a pretty modern computer. I mean, it's less than a year old. I got a pretty decent video card and hard drive space. I mean, it just didn't matter. It's just huge. So you want to watch that when you're making your maps and such, and when you're importing maps into Fantasy Grounds. You don't want them that big. So like a standard map on here in JPEG format was 10 megabytes, 7,000 by 7,000. That's already too big. So being that we went ahead and changed these to WebP. So this is chapter 2. So that same map now is only, it's 10 megabytes, but it's not as heavy as it was before. So let me check this out. So this is WebP, and this other one is JPEG. So that one didn't change much in size. So this is 7,000 by 7,000. So these are really big maps. I'm going to have to probably reduce those down because they're just way too mammoth. Yeah, these overland maps here, you're not going to be doing much on there other than going from building to building. And then you have these extra rooms in here if you want to use this. So to be on the safe side, I might take these and actually cut them in half as far as file size goes. They don't need to be that big. So maybe 4,000 by 4,000. Right now they're at 7,000. That's way too big. So this is virtual tabletop, no grid. And that's still a little bit big for Fantasy Grounds. You could probably get away with about 8 by 8 or 8,000 by 8,000, but that's pushing it. I think I'd just cut that down in half to like 3,800 or something like that, or 3,600, something that's a lot closer to what Fantasy Grounds should be using anyways for this. But they're pretty big. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous for file size. It might work with Roll20 or Foundry, but I don't know. It's still a pretty big map. And then they have these. This is like a little prison map here. Not sure why this is specific, but I think it has to do with breaking out in one of the chapters. So it might be why they provide it. Yeah. So this one isn't that bad, but again, it's probably a huge file. Let's see what the file size is. So if I close this, let's hover over that. So this is, this is very small. It's like not even that. It's like less than half of a quarter of a megabyte. So it depends on the dimensions of the file itself. So this one is 560 by 700. So that's well underneath the required range. Let's see what this one is. This one's 7 grand by 7 grand. Yeah, so this one's 3 by 2. So yeah, all of these maps here, I'm gonna have to cut them in half probably in reduction because they're just way too big. So I'll do that probably individually. I'll just cut these in half. Not too worried about the scale. The only one I'm really worried about the scale is the Red Brand Hideout. So let me take a look at that. So that one's 4,200 by 2,800. So that's pretty good, like scale-wise. That's doable. So that I'd probably leave that dimension. It's still big, but at least it's not, you know, too herkin like those other ones. Yeah, so this one's doable. So I can handle that. So this one is definitely a large map, but it's not too ridiculous. But those regional maps are just ginormous. They're huge. So I'm going to have to shrink those down probably about half the size they are now. Fortunately, I won't really have to put a lot of line of sight on there. And if I do, I'll just use Map-Align to line up the grid if I need to. But the fortunate thing is that I found maps that don't already have a grid, so it's not going to kill it if it's off a little bit. So that's, you know, something you'll have to contend with if that's what you're going to do when you go to resize these. If it's not done exactly mathematically, they don't always come out square. They'll come out kind of rectangular or oblong, so you have to fix those if need be. But not all of these need line of sight, so it just depends on what your needs are. The main one is that dungeon and maybe just that one overview of the town. All the rest of these can just have a grid on it and don't have to worry about anything else. Like this here, this is that mansion type thing. So I'd probably just put a line of sight on there. It's a pretty big area to walk around. So, you know, this could be a pretty good map. Nothing worse than getting a grid that, yeah, no doubt. 48 by 53 to get it line up right. Yeah, that's exactly right, too. Yeah, I end up using that Map-Align because that's my savior there, because that way I don't have to worry about that. I just do the best I can with that. But yeah, I hear you. It's not conducive to making it square anyways. But that's probably the biggest challenge I'll have here with the rest of the maps, is just to size these up. So I'll probably be spending a lot of time on that, which I don't care for, but that's part of the game. But back to what I was saying earlier, I want to take a look at the PDF again to see what they have for Chapter 1. So Chapter 1, I think I did all the tables for it, but I just want to see what, if they did anything with the traps. I don't remember. That's kind of what I was wondering. So that's that. So these are the adventure alterations. Okay, so that's just the heap of items that they might come across. Okay, so here's the goblin personalities, NPCs, and there was the... Okay, so not too much in regards to the traps or anything. There's extra tips for Sildar. Kregma Hideout, goblins. These are all the different names for the goblins. There's Sildar's sayings, his traits and habits, things in his pockets, and his main concerns, like summary. And then this last part deals with the stuff inside the cave. So this isn't too bad. So I'm already done with that. I've already made all the tables and the text for that. So that's not too bad. So then I'm going to go to Chapter 2, take a look, kind of preview of that, see what we got here. So this is Chapter 2. This is the next chapter I'll be on. I'm almost done with 1. So this gets into, let's see, a full-size map for Phandelver. Yeah, we saw that. A bunch of tokens. Yep, we got those. So that's another thing I got to do, is work on all the tokens. Events that might happen in and around town. Red brand encounters, like what actually some alternative things. So if you want your players to have a little bit more interaction with the red brands, the ruffians that are in town, they have 3 extra encounters that will help link players into the story, and it will involve NPCs, and each one has like an outcome that might be good or ill for the party. So that's pretty cool. So there's 1, 2, 3 encounters there, potential encounters. Then they have one that talks about the residents of Phandelver. So this one's really important. I think when you have an urban adventure, it's nice to have a few of these people kind of somewhat made up. So I'll probably make all these into a NPCs, but it's nice to have this information here. I'll just kind of paste that on the back of them on the other tabs. So you got some hospitality, set dressing, and lending circles. So basically, one of the buildings you get hospitality. She offers a mug of sweet punch. The set dressing, there's a tiny white pet dog, Birdie. He snaps at everyone's ankles and races in circles around the house. Lenine pays it no attention. Then the lending circle, she asks if you might return to Alger the blacksmith a pair of leather gauntlets that she borrowed until she had her own. So these are just little errands that you can run in between adventures and in the town so that you can get more, a little bit more familiar. And I think I remember reading that the new adventure has some information about some updates on some of these individuals. Like they changed one guy into a drow. I don't remember which one. I think it was Harbin, or it was one of the dudes. So it's probably Harbin, or it's this Alderleaf guy. One of them ends up being a drow instead of a human. So they changed that, and I don't remember why that was changed, but that's something they're changing in the adventure. And there's a few other minor changes, but most of it's the same, so I don't feel like I'm going to waste too much time doing this. And then here's the Red Brand hideout, and they give you some more extras, so some ideas. So, you know, from each room they have it labeled, and this is some extra lore or extra ideas for each area. So this is really, I feel like I'm the one who wrote this, because this is exactly the type of thing I would have done for my adventure. I may not use these, but I'm going to put them in the adventure area so that they're accessible for me, so I don't have to go digging around for them. And then the Red Brand undercover identities is something that you can add for the background for these guys. So this is really cool. So there's not a whole lot in regards to content other than, you know, some tables and some ideas, some notes, and then you got a bunch of maps though. I mean, there's like 8 maps or something like that, but most of it's overland. The one I'm going to focus on the most probably is just one town map, and then the actual Red Brand hideout. Everything else should be pretty simple. And I can copy and paste this image out of here and then use this as my kind of my DM reference if I wanted to, and tie it into this. I could copy this out and make a kind of like a what do you call it, a reference manual sheet out of it if I wanted to. Yeah, let's take a little peek at number 3. Let's see what we got in here. So this is more exploration stuff. So the chapter 3 do a lot more exploration. Okay, so it's getting into the different areas like Old Owl Well, Thunder Tree and Wyvern Tor, Cragmaw Castle, and then it gets into the weather and stuff. So that's pretty cool. So this one is dedicated to exploration. So that's neat. So you got a little bit of a dungeon crawl, then you got some exploration, and now this one is talking about the Wave Echo Cave. There's some loot, some random events that you can put in there. Things about the Forge, like what spells were created there, and even some alternative scenarios in case you've already run the adventure before, you want to do something different. And then what's next. So it tells you that if you want to tie it in to something else, you can suggest that it leads to Candlekeep Mysteries or the House of Lament in one of the Van Richten's guide, or it leads to a ruined house and 10-level dungeon. So it can be one of their maps that they made. So these are just what's next. But well, we know what the what's next is going to be the Phandelver and below. But that's pretty cool. They try to give you some ideas of where to go next. Some people played like Storm Kings of Thunder. Some people play the one with the dragons. I can't remember, the Tyranny of Dragons. There was some, logical progression there from the Wizards of the Coast products a few years ago, but now that's changing, obviously. But people that ran that adventure are probably like, damn, I wish I would have waited for, or maybe not. Maybe they're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't run that adventure for anyone. So anyways, I'm going to make this a short one. I'm going to go back to making some dinner, but I wanted to share with you some of the work that's ahead of me. So I got a lot to do. And I got about three and a half weeks to get all this done. So I'm going to be running a paid game on Start Playing. So I want to have at least all this stuff done first before I even get into that. When the adventure is released, I'll get deeper into that. But I'm using GIMP. I'm using some AI. I'm making a little bit of artwork. I'm using the tools available to me, and most of it's free, to get the job done. So next episode, I think I'll start diving into Chapter 2 more. I think all I'm going to do next on this map here is, because I've already did the line of sight, this is the last map. So I just added a little bit of the trees here, and then I'm going to place those 2 traps. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that animation to the map itself. So I might just turn off the effects for a bit, turn off the lighting, and then go in and take some of those really nice, fancy looking trees and put those in here. So let me just grab one and we'll see what it looks like. So I'm going to go to, this is the layer tool on the map. And here's some animated bushes. There's leaves, flowers. Yeah, so I wanted the bushes. So I'm just going to drag and drop this if I can get to it. Right now it looks like there it is. Okay, so bush animated. Drop it in there. So it's kind of big. It's like 5. So I'm going to go with 4.7. And then click on the map, see where it goes. Yeah, so that looks all right. It's a little bit dark. So what I normally do is I'm going to click on the pointer or the selection, make sure I have that layer selected. And then I'm going to take and lower the opacity a little bit so it kind of blends in with the existing. There we go. That really does make a difference. So now it looks like it's part of the artwork and not just something slapped on top of it. So what I'll do is I'll put all the different things for the different directions. So if I go back to the stamp tool, and I'll just find the similar type things where I might want to put that like right here. And then what I'll do is I'll take this tint. I'll actually go back here, turn this down a little bit, and then move it. And if you hold down the control key, you don't get the snap to grid. So if that drives you nuts, you can do that. And I think I want to turn down the alpha key a little bit more. Yeah, so this will help blend it into the existing content, and then you still get that movement. So, and these are the newer assets that Josh had put out a couple weeks ago. Yep. So there's stuff here. Yeah. So I'm just going to put that direction on some of this here. Oops. So I want to make sure I go back to the tile tool and then stamp where I want it to go. So I'll say right there, and then I'll just take it and move it. Yep. And then blend it in. There we go. So I'll just do that throughout the map, kind of give it some light. And then what I'll do is I'll change the direction, have it facing to the left and to the right and then down. So I'm going to do all the front facing ones that face upward. And then I'm going to rotate the asset and then do the couple sideways ones, and then I might add a couple flowers in here. You know, kind of make it a little bit like right in here. I'll probably put a little patch of flowers, like kind of close to the cliff, but not right in the trail. You know, just kind of give it some life. Trying to bring some life to it. I might throw another flock of birds up here, probably in the southern area. So, where are those guys at? Okay, here they are. So I might take the birdies here. And that's 14. So I got 20 now. And stamp tool. Yeah, so there's the birds right here. So they're kind of flying overhead. And if you're not happy with the size, you can always, you can always select the layer and then type in another value. So maybe I'll go up to 30. There we go. So now it looks like they're closer to you. They're up higher, essentially. So that's kind of a cool way to make these maps come to life, is just to add a couple little things like that. And it takes a static map, kind of makes it look more lively. Like there's a little wind, and you got the lighting and all that stuff. So it'll look pretty good once it's set up. It'll look really good. But anyway, so that's all I'm going to be doing. This is the last of the maps for Chapter 1. I've already done all the tables. So I'll be moving to Chapter 2 in the next episode. We'll just finish this map up. I'll place the traps that I had kind of redid. I wanted those done so that I have this back information. And then I was going to put a unique token for each one to put on the map. But I thought, you know what for? It's just a trap. And then, I already have the damage and the saving throw on here. These don't have to go in the combat tracker. All you have to do is just link them to the map. And then when you pop that stat block off, you can just drag and drop this onto the map or onto the party sheet or into the combat tracker onto whoever gets affected by the trap. And that's why they asked about the marching order. So I'll have to remember that too. I'll make a note of myself to ask the players to set up their marching order to go through the trails. All right, so I think that's about it today. I did a little preview on what I got coming ahead, and then kind of made some changes for myself to kind of make this a little bit more interesting and fun. And then, of course, I'm still working on the maps and the tokens and such. So that'll be a lot of work for Chapter 2. I think I'm going to take a break from this stream for a while and get a majority of the work done, and then just kind of show off what I've done, and anything that I think that I haven't covered yet, I'll try to save that for the show. But everything else, I think I'm going to have most of it done, and that's going to take me probably a couple days if I don't stream and yap and explain everything. It should take me less time actually. So take care, everyone. Enjoy your week. It is already hump day. Tomorrow's Thursday. Short week.